Hey guys, this is Candle, and it's time for another gaming pickups video. I have quite a bit here, and just like last time was the Sega Genesis episode, this one is pretty much the Nintendo episode. I have a lot of Nintendo games. I actually got something for pretty much all their home consoles this time around, so I think we'll just go ahead and kick this off in chronological order, I guess. So, starting things off, I pretty much doubled my NES library from 5 games to 10 because I got, the Super Mario trilogy. We got the Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2. This is, of course, the Western edition, where it's actually a different game from the Japanese version of Super Mario Brothers 2, and then Super Mario Brothers 3. Now, I have, of course, played all these games before, but I've never owned them till now because I didn't grow up with an NES. I grew up with a Sega Genesis was my first gaming system, so I didn't get to play these until much later. Though I have played them now, and I know some of you are thinking, why do you have the standalone cart for Super Mario Brothers? Why not shell out the cash for a Duck Hunt duology, or like the one pack with Duck Hunt, or so on? Well, it turns out that I think the standard edition card is just a little bit more rare than the Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt combo card, and like the triple card with the stadium events as well, because those were pack-ins with the system, so they're extremely common to find. Whereas this is a little bit rarer. Like it's not super rare. It's not a very expensive game. It's only like $15, so it's not super expensive or rare or anything. But it's still good to have that. Eventually, I will get the combo carts, just not right now. I wanted the standalone cart. But I also picked up. You got an NES. You gotta have the Zelda games. I have both Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, which is a really really weird title because it's not the Legend of Zelda 2. It's just Zelda 2: Adventure of Link. And then on the actual art here, it says just the Adventure of Link. So some people like classify it under A for Adventure, some people under Z for Zelda. I put it after, since it's the sequel to The Legend of Zelda, I'm going to put it after that. And these, of course, are both the gold cart versions. Um, Legend of Zelda, I mean, it's nearly pristine. There's a couple dings where you can see past the gold paint, and Zelda 2, it's got some dings as well, but still glad to have both of these in my collection now as well. And then next up is a Super Nintendo RPG I've been wanting for the longest time. I played it years ago as a ROM and never actually finished it, but I finally tracked down through eBay. I tracked down a copy of Soul Blazer. Now this is from Quintet and published by Enix. This was from before the merger with Squaresoft. And this is part of a loose trilogy of games. Soul Blazer, middle one was Illusion of Gaia, also known as Illusion of Time in Europe. And then the third one is Terranigma, which never got a North American release. Quintet unfortunately went under before they could publish a North American release. However, an official English translation does exist because they did publish it in Europe. But I am glad to have this game and finally played through all the way through it. I almost picked up Lufia and the Fortress of Doom earlier today because I saw a copy of it for $15, and I was like, that can't be right. A Super Nintendo RPG is usually more expensive than that. So I took a look at it, and sure enough, it was a reproduction. It was a fairly decent reproduction, but the problem was Super Nintendo cartridges have the Nintendo logo engraved in the back here, and it had the oval for it, but it didn't actually say Nintendo on it. So it could have been an original card in there and just a replacement backing for the cartridge, but I wasn't going to take the chance because I kind of want original carts as much as I can. To my knowledge, I only have one reproduction in my collection right now, which is Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo, and the only reason I did that is because I really, really wanted a physical copy of that game, but it's like buku expensive for the originals. That's a game where the cartridge itself, just the cartridge, is $200. You see a lot of these Super Nintendo RPGs complete in box for $150 to $200, but the cartridge there itself was $200, and complete in box it's like $400. It might have gone up since I last checked. I don't know. But moving forward again, I also finally picked up Banjo Tooie. So now I'm only missing two Rareware games that I actually care about. There's like four of them that I don't have, but there's only two I'm missing that I care about, which of course are Conker's Bad Fur Day and Perfect Dark. I also have the original Banjo Kazooie, I have DK64, and I have GoldenEye. So this rounds out my Rareware collection to four, with two more that I really want to get. And then moving on again, we have GameCube games. And I finally and expanding my GameCube collection. Starting things off here, we have Battalion Wars. Now, believe it or not, this is an Advance Wars spinoff. Actually, I did a little bit of research into the Advance Wars series, and even though Advance Wars was the first one to make it out of Japan, the Wars franchise actually goes all the way back to the Famicom. With Famicom Wars, and you would see updates on various platforms, like there was Game Boy Wars and so on. They didn't really stick to a specific title until Advance Wars, where they ended up doing 2 on the Game Boy Advance, 2 on the DS, and then we also got Battalion Wars on the GameCube, and there's also Battalion Wars 2 on the Wii. I don't know if that one got a Western release though. But I'm very interested in playing this because, like I said, it's an Advance Wars spinoff. So this is a real-time strategy game, whereas Advance Wars was always turn-based. I'll still be interested to see how that works. But I also picked up Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. Now, Sonic Adventure is pretty much my favorite of the classic 3D Sonic games. I know a lot of people prefer Sonic Adventure 2, but I've always kind of preferred Sonic Adventure 1. And it's as janky as it is. I was playing this earlier and clipped through one of the environments. As janky as it is, it's still really nice to add this to my collection. So now I have all physical copies released in North America of Sonic Adventure 1. So eventually I'll get Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and so on. But beyond that, I've also been a bit on a Resident Evil kick recently, trying to get prepared for the release of the Resident Evil 3 remake. And not quite completing my GameCube collection, but adding to it, I got Resident Evil 0. This was one of only 2 Resident Evil games exclusive to the GameCube, the other being Resident Evil 4, because you also had Resident Evil 2 and 3, which were direct ports of, I think, the Dreamcast version, maybe the PS1 version, I'm not sure. And then Resident Evil 1 was a full-on remake as well. And so yeah, this is the weird one where you play 2 characters simultaneously, and it's kind of a single-player co-op game, because you kind of flip back and forth between the 2 characters, and so you really have to keep an eye on them. I haven't gotten to this one yet, playing it yet. I do have the HD remaster, though, in the Resident Evil Origins collection on PS4. But yeah, this is complete in box too. The only thing I might be missing is like whatever insert they might have had for like safety and so on, because I've got the manual, I've got both discs, and of course this is an original GameCube 2-disc box, so definitely glad to add that. And speaking of original GameCube stuff, way back when, there was a Legend of Zelda game that was probably the first console one I ever actually beat. And that was Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures. Now, unfortunately, I traded it into GameStop at some point because I was a stupid kid. And I really wish I hadn't, because it's now worth... I got this one for like $75. Yeah, it's the full box copy. Complete with the original cardboard double box, the manual, all the inserts and everything, including the Game Boy Advance GameCube link cable is in here as well. And I got this for like $75 off of eBay after tax and shipping, and I think they regularly go for closer to 80 to 90, I think. So I think I got a decent deal on here. The cardboard box isn't exactly in the best of shape, but it's not the worst either. The only kind of icky thing about it is you can see some sticker residue. There was a sticker along here, probably like a Half Price Books price sticker or something like that. And there's also a little security thing on the bottom, but I'm still glad to add this back to my collection, because other than Wind Waker, this is the only GameCube Zelda game that is exclusive to the GameCube, or at least was upon release, because Twilight Princess debuted on both Wii and GameCube, and then there's the promotional discs and that have like the older Zelda games as well, which I don't have in my collection yet. I will eventually though, but I'm definitely glad to add this to my collection as well. So definitely glad to add this. And the only unfortunate thing is I don't think I have a protector big enough to fit this, because the biggest protectors I have right now are for the Super Nintendo games, and you can see it's not gonna fit. It's not gonna fit. So I'm just gonna have to have the cardboard sit on the shelf for this for a while. But that is it for the GameCube games. Moving on a little bit further, I ended up picking up some Wii games, because GameStop for some reason still has Wii games if you go into them, and they're actually going for fairly cheap nowadays. So I picked up Endless Ocean Blue World. This is kind of a scuba diving simulator, and this is the sequel to Endless Ocean, so it's kind of almost like a sequel or expansion where it's more scuba diving and so on. And I really need to get into these at some point. My dad has always been big on scuba diving, so I've kind of wanted to get into this to be a little bit closer to one of his hobbies. That I just never really got into it. I also picked up Wario Land Shake It, which, as far as I am aware, was the last released Wario Land game. There have been WarioWare games since, but this was the last one, and this is the Wii game, so it's got like Wii motion controls and stuff like that. I think this is what, the 5th Wario Land game, maybe 6th, I don't know. And then I also picked up Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and you might be wondering, why would I pick this up when I already have Metroid Prime Trilogy? And it's because I'm a collector, okay? So I have Metroid Prime Trilogy, which has, you know, the new play control versions of Metroid Prime 1 and 2, as well as Metroid Prime 3, all on one disc. And then this is just Metroid Prime 3. Definitely glad to add that to my collection as well. And then GameStop also has Wii U games still, and some of them are getting a bit cheap, like, say, Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. I was able to pick this up, I think it was only like maybe 15, 20 bucks, I don't really remember. But a lot of Nintendo games tend to hold their value because they're still Nintendo. So you'll see Wii and Wii U games at GameStop still for like 40, 50 bucks almost, because they are like high-profile Nintendo games. But something else that also was fairly cheap was Super Mario Maker. And unfortunately, there's no manual in this. I don't know if this actually shipped with one or not. But it's definitely glad to add this to my collection finally. Maybe eventually I'll get Super Mario Maker 2. And then I also got the NES Remix Pack. And this is a little bit interesting because Nintendo released the NES Remix games to the Wii U eShop. And basically what they do is it's almost like a WarioWare approach, where they take classic NES games and, you know, add these little quirks and twists to them and make these little challenges and so on that last for longer than a WiiWare game does, or not a WiiWare, a WarioWare game does. But either way, this includes NES Remix and NES Remix 2, plus a copy of the original Super Mario Brothers that has been mirrored and reversed and stars Luigi instead of Mario. So you're actually running to the left of the screen rather than the right. And I love the fact that the disc is actually like an NES cartridge in terms of the label design. I mean, just looking right here, here's an NES cartridge and there's the disc. So you can see it's right on there, which I think is kind of neat. But then moving on, we have the most recent Nintendo home console, which I am almost tempted to consider a handheld instead at this point because of the Switch Lite. But we have a couple Switch games that I picked up brand new. They were actually only like 20 bucks, which is really interesting because apparently Sega decided to print new copies of these for Christmas. So I was able to pick up Sonic Mania, an actual physical cartridge. This is not Sonic Mania Plus, which includes the Encore DLC. This actually just has an ad for the Encore DLC inside it. But this is the original Sonic Mania, and when this first released, the only way you could get a physical copy on the Switch or on the PS4 was to get the collector's editions, which were really hard to find if you didn't pre-order it. And then they put out physical editions for Sonic Mania Plus, and then eventually they just did the base game again, you know, do a second print run of the original. But definitely good. That is probably my all-time favorite of the 2D Sonic games at this point. Not the classic ones, but of all 2D Sonic games, it's probably my all-time favorite at this point. And then I also picked up Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. This is a remake, and I don't know whether to classify it as a remaster or a remake, because they did change up some of the assets. But this is this was originally a Wii game that they decided to port to modern systems and put in HD. And it's a lot of fun, but it's also devilishly difficult after you get past the first few worlds. And I had forgotten how crappy the actual controls are, because it basically controls like Marble Madness, except the camera's behind the ball instead of, you know, a top-down view. So you've got like all those marble physics and everything, except it's just really weird and tough to struggle with and so on. I also picked up the PS3 version of Nier. I've wanted this for the longest time and could not find it, so that's why I ended up picking up the Xbox 360 version. Excuse me. Now, the interesting thing about Nier is in Japan, the PS3 and the Xbox 360 versions are completely separate games. There's Nier Gestalt, and then there's another one with a different subtitle that I can't remember which is which. I think Nier Gestalt was the 360 version, and when it came to the West, rather than porting over, or rather than localizing both versions, all they did was localize Nier Gestalt and then port it over to the other platform. So that was the version we got. The other one still has yet to be released in the West. It is not Nier Automata. That is actually the third Nier game, though only the second one we've gotten in the West here. But the interesting thing about Nier is it's kind of set in a post-apocalyptic world that continues on from one of the bad endings from Drakengard on the PS2, which is really weird because Drakengard is a completely different type of game. Drakengard was Square's fantasy trope version of basically Dynasty Warriors, where you've got these massive hordes of enemies that you're going into and so on. But beyond that, I also picked up another Xbox 360 game, and I think last time I was on here, I was talking about Forza Horizon 2, and I ended up playing through that and really enjoyed it. That one goes through Southern Europe, specifically the French-Italian border down near the Mediterranean. And I also picked up Forza Horizon 1, which is throughout the United States, specifically the Rocky Mountains in and around Colorado. So definitely glad to add that to my collection as well. I do need to get the 360 version of Horizon 2, though, as well as Horizon 3 and 4. Excuse me. All this talking. I haven't talked so much in a while because I haven't been doing Let's Plays recently. But beyond that, I did also satisfy my Final Fantasy kick for a little bit by picking up the Day 1 edition of Final Fantasy 15 for the PS4. This actually makes it the fifth version of Final Fantasy 15 I own, and the third on the PS4, because I got the Deluxe Edition when it first came out, I got the Royal Edition when that came out, and then I eventually picked up the Standard Edition on Xbox One, as well as the Windows Edition on Steam. And Final Fantasy is one of the few franchises where I will grab pretty much every variant I can get my hands on. So the only one I'm missing on PS4 now is the Ultimate Collector's Edition, which was, I want to say, around almost $300 when it first came out. It's probably more now, but I couldn't justify the price then, and I can't still justify the price now, which is why I have the Deluxe Edition of the Final Fantasy VII Remake on pre-order from Amazon, and not the Ultimate Collector's Edition from Squaresoft. So eventually I'll get all of that, but not for right now. Okay, and rounding things out, I think last time I talked about, maybe the time before, I talked about the Yakuza games, picking up Yakuza 6, and initially getting a copy of Yakuza Kiwami that I had to pass on because there was label side scratches on the disc, so I wasn't wanting to take the risk on it. Well, I was able to find another copy of Yakuza Kiwami, pristine condition on the disc, in GameStop. So I picked it up, and this is actually the Steelbook edition. So it's this really, really nice Steelbook case here, and I'm always a sucker for Steelbooks. So you can see the whole artwork there and everything. Definitely glad to add this to my collection. And then while I was at the store, because I went in on the 11th, mistakenly thinking that Ori and the Will of the Wisps had come out, because I had it on my calendar for that day, when in fact it doesn't come out until March 11th. But that was, however, the same day that the Yakuza Remastered Collection came out, and the GameStop I went to only got one copy in, so I went ahead and picked that up as well. And so this includes, it's a 2-disc pack here, where the games are actually on this. So you've got Yakuza 3 and 4 remastered on one disc, and then Yakuza 5 remastered on a second disc. Now the Yakuza series is kind of interesting because 1 and 2 came out on the PS2, and they got eventually released in the West. But 3 and 4 came out on the PS3, and I think those got released in the West as well. But 5 didn't get a physical edition, at least. It may have been released digitally only, I'm not sure, in the West. Or it might not have come to the West till now. I'm not sure. But either way, in this remastered pack, they decided to include a PS3 case for Yakuza 5. I don't know why. It doesn't have a PS3 version of the game in it. It's just a completely empty case that you can just stick on your shelf and have it sit there and look pretty alongside Yakuza 3 and 4, I guess. But for some reason, they decided to include that as well. So I think the only ones I'm missing now for the main series of Yakuza are Kiwami 2. The Kiwami games are remakes of 1 and 2 because they were on the PS2. They decided to remake them rather than just remaster them. So I'm missing Kiwami 2, Yakuza 0, and then there's that weird one that's I want to say it's like zombies. I don't remember what it is. Yakuza Lost Souls maybe. And then there's also Judgment, which is set in the same universe, but it's not directly tied to the Yakuza story, I don't think. And then I think there's a Yakuza 7 in Japan right now, or it's coming out at some point. But I don't know whether or not that's coming to the West. For those of you who don't know what Yakuza is, it's basically Shenmue on steroids. It basically came out of the ashes of the Shenmue style of gameplay and so on after Shenmue 3 got shut down because the Dreamcast died. And eventually we got Shenmue 3, but I digress. Anyways, that is it for now. I shall see you next time with another Gaming Pickups video. So until then, see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Please remember to comment, rate, and subscribe.